Ron is a certified embodied facilitator, empowerment and compassion coach, nonviolent communication practitioner, and mediator. She used to be a school teacher, biochemist. She's taught children, and she's also a mom. And really, right now, she's passionate about helping people unearth their inner resources and find ease with being fully receptive to their humanity in body, mind, and spirit, and in connection with the world. So, Ron, if we're connected to our hearts, are we more connected to purpose and the world?
We shall see. Well, good afternoon from the UK, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Wow. Well, my training in nonviolent communication reminds me so much of a wonderful quote from Marshall Rosenberg, who founded NVC, which is, never do anything that isn't play. So I have held that as a motto, and I have tried really hard to make my life feel like play. So one of the important things in purpose, I think, is caring for our own well-being. And this feels very precious to me because actually no one else out there knows what's going on inside of us. So that's felt very important to me. How do I care about my own well-being? And of course, lockdown has really highlighted that for me, because many resources that I normally rely on are not available, and it's probably very similar for all of you. And why did I begin with living from a full heart? Well, love seems to be the only thing that's enormous enough to embrace everything, embracing everything that we contain inside ourselves and all the ways in which we relate with the world. So love really is a big highlight for me, and I talk about it all the time. So I imagine a full heart having the capacity to relate with all that happens within us and in relationship with the world. Vibrating in resonance. This is my image and how I imagine living in the present moment. So in this way, when I think about that, all kinds of division kind of deny us being at one with ourselves and all the other sentient beings and the stones and the rivers and the soil and the air and the light. So you're beginning to hear some of the values I have and the things that link me with feeling on purpose. And of course, being on purpose isn't just one thing. There are many things. And this was a hard lesson for me to learn, that sometimes my purpose might be to rest or to stand still or to listen, and that it wasn't all about jumping out, doing something, being busy, and achieving in a kind of very active way. So what I want to do is to pick out some precious needs and values that are highlighted in how we move from that place, from not on purpose to in purpose. And I'm going to use a couple of examples from my own life, because that's what really interests me, is those turning points. Where does the transformation really happen? You know, how do we go from I'm not on purpose to wow, here I am on purpose? And I used to be a school teacher. So that's quite a big thing. I worked as a school teacher, and the whole time I was doing it, I knew perfectly well that was not my purpose. And it gave me money and I could pay the mortgage. And so it met needs. And there's something very cheeky about not being on purpose, is that also meets other needs. And it was easy for me to get kind of seduced into thinking, oh, it must be okay. You know, I've got money, I can do what I want. Well, I couldn't do what I want because I never had any energy. Because not being on purpose is very draining. So when I worked as a school teacher, I was very resistant. I never wanted to do the work that meant sitting at home, marking papers and planning lessons. I just never wanted to do it. So I put it off till about midnight and then I would do it. So no wonder I was always exhausted. So of course that's not very functional. And at the time, I really didn't know what else to do. And I'm sure that present Ron would have some really great advice for Ron being a school teacher. So what I did love about school teaching, of course, what could be better than spending all your days around young people? They're all so different. That was really fun. But there was another piece to that, which was because about 40 years before, I did a degree in biochemistry. That was all I was actually allowed to teach. And so I taught chemistry. I taught sciences and chemistry. And there was fun in that. But there was so much of me that wasn't being present. And so being present is such a hugely important part of purpose. How to be right here in this moment when no part of me is somewhere else. So, of course, I studied sciences. So logic was a big part of my training. And I spent a lot of time in my head thinking that my head could reason everything out that I needed. And I reasoned that even if school teaching wasn't the best thing for me, I'd have spare time in which I could do other activities. But the reality was I was rather exhausted a lot of the time. So I didn't have time to devote wholeheartedly to other pastimes. I felt as though the world had shrunk a bit. And this business about distance from purpose is very draining. And so I thought about what are the things that are keeping me off purpose? What was it that I was doing that wasn't who I am? I tried. I thought I could change the whole education system in the UK just to fit me so that I would be happy. So it was a wonderful transformation to learn that I could look after me and I could change just what I could have around me and influence those who are around me. So one aspect of being on purpose is the sense of self-connection, that I'm connected to me, to my needs and my values and what matters to me and how I am. Another one is a block is the denial, because I told myself when I was, well, this has to be okay. I could never say, this is terrible. I'm not coping at all. I'm in a mess. I'm exhausted. I need a change. I thought what I had to do was try to do a better job. And if that's ever happened to you, any of these things that I'm saying, please put them into the chat and thank you for doing that. It means a lot to me. Another one is about voice. That working in a system like schooling meant that apart from the fact that I had a voice to teach chemistry in the classroom, I didn't really have my own voice. I couldn't really speak about what mattered to me. And that affected me so much because I didn't feel like I was truly there. Another block was, well, this is all I know how to do. These are my qualifications. I've got to do this. And that's a very difficult one. And that sort of attitude, of this is all I can do really comes into nonviolent communication, where I'm telling myself I have to do it. And the trouble with all these blocks to my purpose was that they're really painful. Not having energy, turning up every single week to my dance class, and saying, I'm so tired. So there's something enormous about energy and having resources. Okay. This business of finding resources and being resourced is truly this part of taking care of oneself, taking care of our own well-being. That really matters and feels really rich for me to kind of begin with, okay, here I am. Where are my resources? What are my resources? What's accessible? And certainly in lockdown, I've really had to come in here and find out what are the resources within me that I can use to come into the world. Another block to being on purpose is dismissing things as not important. And so one of the things I want to mention is really listening to the quiet voices, the little niggles inside of us, feeling the twinges in our body that are telling us, hey, you're not on purpose. This isn't okay for you. What can you do? How much do we listen to the quiet parts of us, the quiet voices that live in us and are trying to help? So this feels huge to me, to pause and stop trying to dash into the world and, make a big splash there, although that's quite fun too. To come back in, come into my own presence and say, what's going on? What do I need right now? What's that twinge that's going on? What's that niggling thing that's going on? And one of the things that we do when we hear these little voices, we tend to push them away. Okay. Sometimes there are parts of ourselves, very often the parts that are in pain and feeling vulnerable and sad and disappointed or angry, frustrated and irritated. And we don't often enjoy those parts of ourselves and we want them to go away. And we push them away and we try to focus on something that feels positive. And that's not completely purposeful for me, because for me, I feel that I want to embrace everything. For me, purpose needs to include all the little voices and the little uncomfortable parts and the niggles and the painful bits, because they are part of us and they're part of our aliveness and they're part of voices that we need to hear to stay well, to stay present. And I'm noticing a little mention here in this battle, follow the heart, follow the mind. So of course, what is purposeful for me is to align all of that. Okay. And so beginning to be conscious of what's in my head and all these thoughts that are telling me, oh, you must do this, or I'm scared of that, or I can't do something new because I just have to do this better. How do we align all those things with the heart? Okay. So to bring them into the open, to bring out all those beautiful parts of ourselves that are sad and frustrated and annoyed, and say, oh, hello, what do you want to tell me today? Thanks for being here. What is it that you need? And that is really, really precious, because we can't be on purpose if all these little parts of ourselves are trying to say, yeah, but something's hurting you. So how can we do that? And of course, we can do it by practicing. So, so some of the things that I'd like to bring in here with aligning the head, the heart, the belly. How do I align? First is to accept all of those difficult things, all the discomforts, to accept them and say, yes, yes, I know you're here. Thank you. To openness and curiosity. Oh, here's the world. There's some big noise going on in the world. It's quite hard for me. It's a challenge. And when we look at the world and we feel frustration and fear and worries about what's going on, this came up very much in a talk that I heard for the first talk this morning, which is we need to come back here into our own hearts and bodies. Yes, I can hear the noise of the world, and I need to catch on to some resources that I have so I can face a bit of it. Exploration, playfulness is such a huge part of who I am. And when I taught in school, I had to be quite serious. Of course, I never did that. I would go to meetings and write notes and draw pictures and wander off to the English people and the drama people and the art people because I didn't want to be packaged as a science teacher. So this has a lot to do with confidence. And the thing about pain is it needs love and care. And it will move and melt and soften when it's ready. And very often when we faced pain and we spend some time with it and say, yeah, I hear you. I know you're hurting. When we've spent that time, often the pain receives the nourishment of our attention. The resources that we have, that we very often give these resources quite easily to other people. We bring them in to ourselves, to our pain, and say, yes, I love you. I'm here for you. What do you need? Vision is really valuable. Freedom and relationship. Yeah. So I'd like to say to you that now I do feel on purpose being a coach. I transitioned into this, and that involved quite a lot of time of collapse. And this is why I'm so passionate about being on purpose, because I went from throwing all of my energy in trying to be a teacher into complete collapse and having to lie down for weeks. And that collapse is very nourishing for me. It reminds me what it's like when I'm not on purpose. And it reminds me to take more care of how I am day to day and moment to moment. And that's really huge. So I'd like to bring in, obviously, a bit of embodiment. And I want to share with you a posture that I use to connect with the ground. And so here is one of the things that I'm offering to connect the heart and the body with the head. Okay, so please feel free to let me know if this works for you. I'm going to show you the base of this, which is to have the feet a little bit wider than the hips and the toes a bit outwards, and to let soften the knees and let the body, the upper body, kind of sink down, and let the palms face the ground. So please feel free to do this if you would like, or to not do it if you don't feel that's what you want right now. And because I want to connect, I do this in the garden every morning. So here I am doing this posture, connecting me to the ground. And then I practice saying something. And I say something like, thank you, Mother Earth, for holding me every single day of my life and today. And that's brought up some tears in me, because that invitation to say something to what I'm doing is an invitation for my head to have attention in the body. So instead of my head thinking, I'll just do this posture and then I'll run off and I'll do the shopping, to stay with the posture, to feel that it means something to me, and to bring my head involved with words and thoughts that are all attending to this body that's just sinking and feeling my weight sink into the ground. And to allow it to be like this. And in those moments, it's a practice of just paying attention to one thing. And so that even though the head and the thoughts can easily spiral off and be in different places, this is a practice of saying, I'm right here, and this is the only thing that I'm doing right now. And discovering for ourselves, I'm just going to shake that off. Discovering for ourselves practices that only take a minute or 2 or 3 minutes, that nourish us and bring our attention completely in line. Because doing such a practice means my feet are on the ground, I'm supported. Every single cell of my body has come from that earth. Feel the breath come in. So let's just notice that we're breathing. And this is a wonderful practice for when we feel pain and collapse, and it feels like we don't have energy to do anything. This piece of aliveness is right there. And so here's an invitation to notice the breath coming in, and notice that the breath is sending oxygen, nourishment to every single cell. And that's huge. It's one of those things it's easy to take for granted, and it's massive. Because as long as our breath is coming in and nourishing every single cell, so that's one piece of being resourced. So that from here, if I think about what can I possibly do to bring my purpose into the world, this is one thing. Simply to allow the nourishment to fill my whole body, and to have that in my imagination and my vision and my words all at once, and to feel that unity through my whole body, that I am nourished by the earth and the air. Thank you. So from here, I'm going to say a little bit about these resources. And I'm going to show you a posture in embodied yoga principles called giving. And in giving posture, so do join me if you wish, I'm going to have my feet about yoga mat width apart. And I'm going to bend the front knee and put about 60% of my weight on the knee at the front. Okay. And this forward movement, this is giving into the world. Okay. So let's do these postures, this posture of giving, and imagine. So here the arms are open and held in front with the palms open. And notice how it feels. What do you want to give to the world? What is it your purpose to bring into the world? And just notice how comfortable this posture is, or is it uncomfortable? Maybe you don't want to give anything to the world right now in this moment, maybe later. And to completely accept that. Or at the beginning of the day, I wonder what I would like to give to the world today. And of course, what's really important is we can't always be giving. So if your legs don't mind staying in the same position, now bring your weight backwards. Bend the knee at the back. Okay, so you bring your whole weight backwards onto the back leg and bring your arms in, tuck them into the body. Receiving. Yeah. So thank you. And if you would like to say in the chat how these postures feel for you, please do that. That would be so lovely. So receiving, we can't always be giving. We need to receive as well. Are we good at receiving? Do we feel that we deserve to take some gifts from the world, from others, to receive and let soak in resources that we need, other people's energy? I'm just swapping legs for comfortableness. And if while we do these postures, we notice I hold a lot of tension sometimes in my hips and lower back, and I can intentionally let go of that. So a huge part of being on purpose is naming what's happening. And simply breathing into the posture for a little, noticing, what do I need to receive? What am I up for receiving? Am I up for receiving? Is that difficult for me? And noticing if all 500 and whatever of us were in the same room, we would notice and tell each other and find that maybe for different people it would be different. And for ourselves at different times of the day or on different days can be different. Okay. And someone has asked in the chat about what about the shift between? Well, I love that question. And of course, that's one to feel into for yourself. How is it? Yeah. And people are noticing where the comfort is and where it isn't comfortable. And I would really invite us to play with those things and find whether the discomfort is about the discomfort in the actual act of giving your energy into the world. Be curious about it. Find out, ask yourselves, why is this part of the posture feeling a little bit difficult or painful or uncomfortable? Oh, thank you for joining me in feeling into those postures. So I'm going to say something else about the head now. And remember, I have this, background as an academic. I did my PhD and I thought that was my purpose. I really thought that's what I had to do. If you can be smart enough to pass all these exams, that must be it. And so what I've been learning, of course, I later had a big resistance to all the academic things. I didn't want any of them. So now what I'm doing is loving all of it, loving that my brain can help me to function and do things in relationship with my heart and my belly and the ground. And that all of it is meant to be in relationship. If there's anything at all that I learned from biochemistry, everything is continually alive in relationship with everything else. Okay? This is huge. So there are two things in the ways that our body relates with itself. One is the nervous system, which is really quick, and we need it to be quick. If you're going to burn your hand or something, you need to move away quickly. And the hormonal system uses the bloodstream, and that's a lot slower. And so sometimes to transform something in the body, it might take a while before a hormone that's secreted in one organ travels through the blood and arrives at a different organ to take action. And so the body already knows that you need fast and slow, and they work together. I love that. And I also love integration, that all the systems within us work with each other. They are all connected. They all know what the next one in line is doing or what it's supposed to be doing. So when I think of the head, of course, what helped me to know that I wasn't on purpose was I was always complaining and I was always irritated, and it was always the system that was against me. And this is important. When we do this, this is a great place to go, ha. Do I hear myself complaining? Because when we're annoyed with the system, it's telling us about what we need ourselves. I particularly love freedom, play, harmony. And so when I worked in a system that was run by an organization, the Office for Standards in Education in the UK, it felt like everything was jammed into just, it had to be this way. And if it wasn't, there was judgment as that's not okay. And I really wanted to embrace everything. And so doing the work that I do now feels on purpose, because when a coaching client comes to me, I have complete enjoyment, respect, and acceptance for everything that they bring. And so much of my work with clients is about helping them to acknowledge and love the parts of themselves that they find difficult. And sometimes it can take them a lot of layers to get underneath to the thing that really is underneath it all. And so please do notice what you get angry about, because that's really special. That is really telling you what your needs are. So it's like you're looking at the other side of the coin, for instance, or just looking at the opposite perspective. And that's such an important part of learning. When you know you're angry, you know you're irritated, because there's something going on in your body, right? Something changes. Your energy goes up, maybe you're breathing more shallowly, and your heart feels like maybe it's beating a bit faster. And all that energy, right? Social injustice and inequity, they make me angry too. But obviously, inside of my anger, I don't have any capacity to do anything about those things or to look after myself. So being here today is a tiny little part of what I can do about social justice and inequity. I can share my passion for nonviolence. I can share my own sense of purpose around embracing all of myself and all of the people in the world as equals. And that includes all the people whose actions I don't like. It's really difficult. I have to practice quite hard. But there's something there that says, I need to be able to accept all the stuff that I don't like. Yeah. Accepting all the things that I don't like, so that maybe if I just happen to meet one person whose actions I don't like, maybe I can meet that person with respect and empathy and really model that I'm aligned, and show how is it to be aligned when you meet something that's really difficult. And so a lot of what I do when I teach nonviolent communication is to suggest ways of meeting the stuff we don't like by saying, it's a little bit different for me, actually. That doesn't really work for me. my heart feels acknowledging that you're a whole human. And I really like David saying that sometimes when you're at the top and you feel overwhelmed and hopeless, maybe that's okay in that moment. And that gradually, once you've accepted it and allowed it, you deepen into the next layer. And the stuff I don't like about myself, well, yeah, that is tough. And what's quite useful for us, of course, in all of these things, when I spoke about resources, is to find support and find people that can support you in a way that's meaningful. And for a great amount of my life, I didn't have people like that around me. I kind of made do with the people that just happened to be there. And finding people that are aligned with you, that care about the thing that you're caring about, and that when you're trying to explore stuff you don't like about yourself, you want to explore it with dignity, with gentleness, tenderness, and compassion. Yeah, you're not asking them to join in and start blaming you as well. I'll say a little bit about that because that's important. So when I teach nonviolent communication, we know that there's something difficult going on because our body can sense it. And when our body senses something, we feel it. So one of the components of nonviolent communication is feeling. But remember, feeling is that you're feeling something your body already did. To acknowledge that. And when we find the words that go with all of those feelings, pain, misery, disappointment, fear, what we really need is empathy. So I'm noticing, obviously, there are many of you here. Some of the time, we need to begin with self-empathy. That's really helpful if we're completely mad with blaming and judging the world and everything out there is bad. Okay, so when we go into fight and the pattern is, oh, it's them, right? That's not a good place to try relating to the other people because they can't really receive you when you're in that type of energy. So what's really good is to feel that energy of, oh, this is so awful and I am so mad. Oh, and let it be like that. Let it be like that with acceptance, and then allow your own compassion and care to absolutely wash in and shower you with compassion and love. And say, oh boy, I am so mad, I can't even talk to people. No one's going to listen to me when I'm like this. I need to kind of soften myself. So I imagine compassion, and you might imagine it different ways. I'm imagining compassion as softening the heart. So instead of pushing out that hard heart into the world, saying, oh, this is terrible, I won't have it. Oh, it hurts me. And my anger is because I really need gentleness, compassion, love. Can we bring that to ourselves? So can we give ourselves a beautiful hug and say, oh, sweetheart. Oh, yeah. You really want the whole world to be different. And in this moment, I love you. Can you say that to yourself? I love you. I know you're doing the best you can. Thank you. And when I feel a bit softer, exactly, then I can be in a place where I can bring my purpose into the world. And sometimes these things happen all the time. They come back. When they're needed, they come back. But gradually, we can be in the middle of the wave and not get knocked down with all sorts of practices. I'm seeing in the chat that for some men, it's really hard to have self-empathy when you're angry, because there's a pressure to fix ourselves and handle it all. Thank you for that. There are some embodied friends of mine who do men's work, and Lee Steggles comes to mind as an embodied friend who runs courses for men, because he really understands what it is to be a man and all of those things that you've just said there. And he looks at me and says, I can't talk to you about this, it's men's work. So flagging up my friend Lee Steggles. So, right, about another 3 or 4 minutes, Virginia? Okay. Yeah, another thing that blocks, yes, Marge, being vulnerable does take courage and strength. It's not a weakness, absolutely. When we can be with our vulnerability, we are absolutely huge, right? To face that and meet it and love it. I don't think I've got time to talk about being in the middle of the wave right now, but it is something about when we are in the midst of difficult emotions, difficult that it's hard to hold them. That is like being in the middle of the wave. When we're so frustrated, we don't know what to do. When we just want to shout or scream or roar, that's like being in the middle of the wave. When we're really, really sad and there doesn't seem to be anything to pick us up, and we just have to lie down and say, okay, I'm going to be sad now. That's the being in the middle of the wave. I love that part of just say, okay, that's the way that it is. And gradually, we can stand up again, because we can practice compassion and love for our sadness. I do want to mention, of course, that in transforming from not on purpose to purpose, there's risk. You know, we're going to have fear for the risk of changing what we're doing. So some of my takeaways are around the things I've said already, which are to pause and notice what's going on, to bring in practices of walking slowly, meditating, breathing, and feeling the ground. Notice, does this feel purposeful? Is this what my body wants to do? So I've really experimented with my embodiment, where I come in and I say, right, I'm now going to have a cup of coffee and watch the TV, because that's what I always do. And so the practice is, wait a minute, what does my body want to do? My body doesn't want to do any of that. Why do I keep doing it? You know? Or it might be, yes, this is what I want to do. And then I'm going to do it. So noticing what your purpose feels like moment to moment. Trust yourself. Trust that the ground holds you every day of your life, that the breath nourishes you every moment. Trust that with some of these things, and empathic people that you choose in your groups and your surroundings, the people who can really hear you, stick around those people. And if there are people that are not like that, you don't have to be with them. Make a boundary and keep them, just step away. Curiosity. Collaboration is really important. I really believed, you know, when I was that girl, I've got to do everything myself. That's the only way I can control everything and make it okay. I'm not on that track right now. I feel really open to my own heart, opening to others and saying, what can we do together? How can we explore something different? What is there that we haven't thought of yet that we could play with? And practice. Qualities you want to enrich.
And that brings us, I can hear you for another 2-3 hours, I don't know, but we are at 1:45, so I'm going to come back to you and ask you for your top tip, although I feel you've said enough top tips already, but we can never get enough. In the meantime, if you want to find Ron, I have been posting her website a few times in the comments. I'm going to do that again. I want to remind you that all these talks will be free for a while up on the Facebook, but they are part of the 3-month-long course as content, which has a lot of belts leading up to the black belt. It's a 3-month-long process. And if you take the course by the end of today, you also get the live Q&A sessions to keep you on track and keep you motivated and engaged and doing the work and getting closer to your purpose. So if you don't want to get the course, that's also fine. Share this with a friend. Surely there are more people in the world who can benefit from it. All the links are there for you in the chat again. Ron, can we have the final word from you for a top tip? Oh, and before we do that, I just want to mention that next up we have Ilan Stefani coming with us with a talk that is definitely not small talk. She's going to be talking about trauma and how trauma fits in with purpose and the end of small talk, and how can our wounds fuel our purpose and meaningful life. It's a paradigm shifting exploration, so stick around for that in a few minutes. And Ron, before we leave you.
Okay, so my top tip is, of course, breathe in and know that every cell of your body is nourished. And as you step forward into the world, do so in the rich beauty of the whole of you, connected in love and compassion. So in wholeness, of course, and as a tribute to one of my favorite embodiment teachers, Philip, who will be on the panel later, thank you so much.